He had thought she was just a famous person, but what was about to happen would change both of their lives forever. The spring sun of Miami filtered through the windows of a small Starbucks squeezed between a law office and a yoga studio on Coral Way. Inside, the aroma of espresso, jazz music, and fatigue dominated the atmosphere. Behind the counter, Maya was trying to keep a smile on her face despite the pain in her feet. She was halfway through her third 12-hour shift of the week. But Maya wasn't just a barista. She was like a magician, juggling dozens of tasks at once. Memorizing orders, handling grumpy customers, fixing the broken milk frother, and all the while trying not to think about the rent she hadn't paid in 2 months. Despite all that, she came to work every day, because people like her had no other choice. The doorbell rang. A tall, calm man with sunglasses and a hat walked in. Maya looked up without even noticing him at first. Then she looked again. It was Jimmy Butler. She had seen him on TV countless times. The shots he made in the final seconds. The victories. Her younger brother had hung his jersey on the wall, and now he was here, waiting in line like everyone else. He was glancing at his phone. He nudged his friend beside him with his elbow. "That's Jimmy Butler!" "No way," his friend whispered. "Why would Jimmy come here?" "I don't know," Maya said. Her heart was racing. "But I think I'm next in line." Jimmy stepped forward. "Hey," he said with a warm smile. "Looks like you've had a long day." Maya was taken aback. Yeah, a little. I'll take the thing with the most caffeine in it, legally," he joked. Maya laughed. Surprised at herself, she said, "Sure." While preparing her drink, Jimmy looked around. He wasn't in a hurry. He didn't seem arrogant or egotistical. When Maya handed him the cup, he said, "This is on me." Jimmy looked at the name tag on her shirt and said, "Maya, thank you for your kindness." He didn't know what to say. No one ever said things like that to him. Not customers, not managers. Certainly not an NBA star wearing million-dollar shoes. Jimmy didn't ask for a photo or make a scene. It was just a small, quiet moment. But Maya's manager had seen it. When the crowd thinned out, she came over to her. "Did you give him a free drink?" Maya hesitated. "No, I used my employee coupon. He's a famous person after all." "This isn't a charity," he snapped. "I don't care who he is. You don't get paid to smile at basketball players." "I just wanted to be nice." "This isn't a charity. You're here to work." Maya lowered her head in silence. Her hands trembling, she returned to the cash register. But the next day, when she arrived at work, she didn't stay at the bar. An envelope with her name on it was waiting for her. The next day, when she went to the shop, she saw an envelope stuck to the staff fridge. She opened it. There was no explanation, no meeting, just one sentence. "We're sorry, we can't work with you anymore." She stood in the middle of the shop, holding the envelope in her hand. Her eyes were fixed on the sun. What had she done wrong? Was being kind now a crime? That day, he returned home early. He collapsed onto the worn-out couch, pulling his knees up to his chest. His brother asked what was wrong. He didn't answer. What could he say? "I lost my job because I was kind?" He hadn't cried yet. He just sat there in silence. But there was something Maya didn't know. The man who had been standing in line for a drink that day, the smiling, observant, grateful man, had not forgotten her. And Jimmy Butler would never let that moment fade away. As the sun rose over Miami, Jimmy Butler quietly got into his car. No driver, no flashes, no fanfare, just a hooded sweatshirt, plain sweatpants, and unassuming sunglasses. But there was something he carried in his heart that morning. Responsibility. That day, he parked in front of the Starbucks branch where Maya had been fired. People were still coming and going, lining up, deciding what to drink. No one seemed to care about what had happened a few days earlier. But for Jimmy, that moment was not in the past. He didn't go into the restaurant. Instead, he sat down on a bench across the street, in the corner. With a notebook in his hand, he jotted down a few lines, remembering the small but meaningful gesture Maya had made that day. It wasn't a plan. It wasn't a manifesto. It was a quiet way to pay back a debt. What was Maya doing at that moment? Was she trying to explain to her family, "I don't know why I lost my job, I just helped someone"? Or was she flipping through job listings, wondering how she would rebuild her life? Jimmy folded the note in his hand. He had written only one sentence on it. Sometimes a small act of kindness can change someone's world. He made a few phone calls that day. He spoke to a journalist he knew, then called a foundation manager. His conversations were short, concise, and determined. "I need to find someone," he said simply. "Someone who needs to be noticed." The next morning, Jimmy returned to the same place. This time he wasn't alone. He was accompanied by a reporter and a cameraman from the local press. However, this was not a show, but a visit of gratitude. They had not come for flashy headlines, but to record the truth. Maya's door rang. When she saw Jimmy Butler standing at the door, she didn't recognize him at first. It was hard to believe it was real. Jimmy smiled at her and held out his hand. "Hi, Maya. Do you remember me?" Maya shook her head in disbelief. "I wanted to thank you for the drink, but that wasn't enough." Then he handed her an envelope. Inside was a letter containing a year's worth of living expenses provided by Jimmy's personal scholarship fund, a link to a new job offer, and a special invitation to a network of women entrepreneurs who wanted to support her. Maya's hands trembled. Her eyes filled with tears. This wasn't just compensation for the injustice she had faced. It was the echo of silent kindness. Jimmy bowed his head politely. "You are someone who deserves to be noticed, and I just wanted to show that to the world." Maya couldn't say anything for a moment. The envelope remained in her hand. Her tears were quiet enough not to break the spell of the moment, but strong enough to wrap around her heart after Jimmy's words. For all those years, she had worked, smiled, and done her duty. No one had ever asked her what she dreamed of. No one had ever truly wondered who she was. But now, the man standing at her door, a world-famous basketball star, wasn't just helping her, he was seeing her. Jimmy took a few steps back, giving Maya some space. The reporter next to him was still raising and lowering his camera, looking confused. Jimmy just signaled, "Wait," with his hand. This was a special moment. It belonged not to the broadcast, but to the heart. "I'm learning from you, Maya," Jimmy said calmly. "Sometimes the real heroes aren't the ones in uniform, but the people who stand on their feet for 8 hours a day and never forget to smile." Maya slowly opened the envelope. Her hands were still shaking as she read the letter inside. It said, "Dear Maya, this world sometimes silences the quietest people the most. But someone like you speaks not only with patience and kindness, but also with faith. This grant is for a new beginning. But I also ask something of you. Share this story with others, because kindness doesn't grow when it's hidden. It grows when it's shared." Maya raised her head. "Why me?" she asked. Jimmy paused, looking into her eyes. "Because I once asked the same question, and someone believed in me. Now it's my turn." A slow smile spread across Maya's face. The weight she had carried for so many years seemed to lift a little. Jimmy stood at the door for a moment longer, then bowed his head slightly and left. The cameraman and reporter beside him were still stunned. But Jimmy said only one thing. Sometimes a video doesn't reach millions of people, but if it reaches the right person, that's enough. That day, a short video was shared on social media. Maya's name was not mentioned, nor was her face fully visible. But people wrote in the comments, "Kindness is still alive. I am once again a fan of Jimmy Butler. It's not money that connects us, it's humanity." And for Maya, life was never the same after that day, because now her name was the first link in a chain of kindness. After leaving Maya's doorstep, Jimmy Butler sat in his car and took a deep breath. This was a day unlike the ones he was used to. The spotlights, the championship ceremonies. This time, he had touched a woman's life, and that touch felt more meaningful to him than an entire season's worth of victories. That night, Maya sat in the corner of her kitchen with the letter in her hand, thinking for hours. Life had taught her to stay silent, to submit, to accept. But Jimmy's simple words, "You are someone who deserves to be noticed," felt like a call that lifted her up, reminding her of the dreams she had suppressed for years. The next morning, Maya woke up early and took out her notebook. For the first time, she would do something not just for others, but for herself. She began to write. She penned her story, revealing every detail she had once been ashamed of. Her father's absence, starting work at a young age, giving up on her dream education, and most importantly, the moment she stood behind the fast food counter, struggling to stay on her feet, yet managing to hand a customer their drink with a genuine smile. With Jimmy's support fund, she enrolled in a course. Then she started volunteering at a local women's center. A year later, those who knew her no longer called her the former Starbucks employee. To them, Maya had become someone who inspired young girls, gave life lessons, and delivered speeches. And she always began her speeches with a single sentence. A stranger told me, "You're noticed," and I started noticing myself. Jimmy didn't expect any reward for his efforts. But one day, while reading a short message in his email inbox, his eyes welled up. "Your drink order changed my life. Now I'm placing the same order for others. Thank you so much, Maya." He saved a screenshot of that email. He didn't put it next to his championship rings. Instead, he quietly smiled as he looked at his phone screen one last time before going to sleep. Because in his eyes, that message wasn't a medal. It was a person rebuilding their life. And so, Jimmy Butler's small act of kindness didn't just change Maya's life. It also reminded the world of a truth. True heroism isn't found in the big arenas. It's in the quiet gesture of offering a drink, in an unseen smile. This sentence became Maya's life philosophy. From then on, she carried this principle with her in every step she took and every word she spoke. The small community she had created for young women in need began to grow. What started as conversations in the back room of a coffee shop eventually turned into a center, and then a movement. Local newspapers began referring to her as the brave woman, but she didn't care about grand titles. She loved small changes, because she knew that being noticed in someone's life was sometimes more valuable than being seen by the whole world. One day, a young girl came to the center with some files in her hands. There was fear in her eyes, but hope in her heart. Maya looked at her and smiled, bowing her head as Jimmy had done years ago. "I see you. I want to hear your story." At that moment, Maya realized that Jimmy hadn't just given her a chance. He had given her the power to give others a chance as well. Around the same time, Jimmy Butler appeared on a talk show and was asked, "Who has had the greatest impact on your life?" He replied, "The person who had the greatest impact on me was Maya." Because sometimes being a star isn't as important as guiding a star. When the program ended, millions of people shared Maya's story on social media. The hashtag "kindness never goes unnoticed" became the most talked about topic of the day. But Maya was far from all the attention, sitting in a chair in the center, serving tea to the young people who came, looking into their eyes, and reminding them of one thing: you are worth being noticed, just like I was one day. And that's how it was. One day, a small thank you from the bottom of a cup changed a woman's life, and that woman changed the fate of a community. Because sometimes, the quietest thank you gives birth to the loudest heroism. If this story touched your heart, please like the video and subscribe. Your support will help more silent heroes be heard.